welcome back. This is episode 196. Yeah, 196. I am Ben Marshall, and co-hosting, as always, is Tom Major. And this week, we have I suppose quite timely, quite sort of recent paper. This is all connected with ongoing sort of geopolitical issues / conflict / war / general unpleasantness. And basically how geckos might be dealing with or being impacted by it in a sort of minor kind of way. It's I think a while ago we looked at a paper about it was something, was it tortoises, was it lizards out in the desert getting spooked by low-flying aircraft?
Yeah, it was those lizards. I can't remember what they're called, but it was the all-female weird little desert lizards in America.
Yeah, and so we've got basically a paper that's following on a similar sort of vein, but dialing up the unnaturally loud noises from jet planes to explosions and general sounds of war.
Yeah, we had that paper where the sounds of jet planes were making the lizards nervous. Remember that? And it makes me nervous too. But and then we also had another case where the Syrian blind snake, remember that? Xerotyphlops syriacus. So that was the same crew that did the paper we're about to discuss. And there was this Syrian blind snake that experienced bombing in Israel after a rocket attack. Basically, it was a rocket attack, and they already had this Syrian blind snake set up in a chamber looking at its carbon dioxide production. So
yeah, something respiration related, wasn't it?
Yeah. And when the rockets landed, they saw that its respiration rate massively peaked and stayed up for a while, and it was stressed essentially. And that was the first record ever of a wild animal's real-time physiological response to the noise of an incoming rocket attack, and it was a Syrian blind snake basically freaking out. Well, that same team is back, and this time they have a paper which delves into this topic in a bit more detail. So similarly, they were already conducting a long-term experiment on the physiology of geckos. So this is ongoing in Israel.
Do you want to give the title of the paper before we get too much further in?
Yeah. I'll get to it. I can do it now. Yeah. Dubiner, Vardi, Meiri, Levin, 2024. Stressed reptiles pay the metabolic price of war, published in Ecology. And so, they were essentially looking at these geckos to measure their carbon dioxide production, see how much energy they were using. And they had this study ongoing anyway at this Israeli university. And then when war erupted between Israel and Gaza, they were already set up to kind of test and quantify the effects of repeated bombings on reptile metabolism, because that is what happened. There were a bunch of bombings, and they were set up to kind of see how the geckos responded to that. But before we get into how the geckos responded, which might be kind of predictable, let's talk about these geckos. Stenodactylus.
They're beautiful, the elegant gecko.
They are, aren't they? They're really nice. Known as the elegant gecko or Liechtenstein's short-fingered gecko.
I think we'll go with elegant gecko. Yeah, I kind of prefer that.
Yeah, Liechtenstein's short-fingered gecko doesn't really roll off the tongue. Not sure who Liechtenstein was either. But found in North Africa and the Middle East. So these lizards like it dry. They got a good name. So their species epithet stheno means strong in ancient Greek. Sthenodactylus. Stheno means strong or forceful, and dactylus means finger. So these are the forceful finger geckos.
Strong-fingered gecko.
Dig. Yeah, they love to dig, so I think they have these really short fingers for digging, and they're very strong.
Carving out through the dry dirt and sand and soil. Yeah, all right.
I don't know how forceful they can actually be, like whether or not you could sort of
I don't want to put that to the test. I don't want to run that risk.
No, but they're really beautiful. They've got this kind of marbled pattern on their backs, quite small, lots of white dots on the back as well. And like I said, because they were already taking part in an experiment investigating their metabolic rate, we now know how they respond to a rocket attack, unfortunately. So the rockets came in, and the geckos didn't like it. Their metabolic rates were heightened significantly, so they're producing 2.3 times as much CO2 immediately after the explosion. So they're basically like, not happy. They appeared to remain slightly raised as well for a few hours later. So apparently these geckos were scared into some kind of stress response from these bombs dropping. not altogether surprising. But, this is still something we hadn't evidenced before in geckos. They also noted that the response didn't become less dramatic. So the geckos didn't seem to sort of get used to bombing after multiple exposures, although they had only a few getting exposed.
Yeah, it was
a lot of times.
And only over the course of 4 weeks, which, 4 weeks isn't a huge amount of time, I would suspect, for a gecko to get used to something as dramatic as this.
No, it's literally bombs landing. It's probably one of the most dramatic things you can experience. And also, honestly, like, habituating to the sound of bombs dropping, is that actually a good adaptation? Like, are bombs dropping not just universally dangerous for everything, being as like parts of the earth suddenly start exploding around you? Is it not good to react to that with fear?
I mean, I think that's a pretty consistent, wise choice. Yeah,
Ben, if you and I were outside and bombs started landing and you seemed non-phased, I would probably have to leave you where you were.
Oh, don't worry, he's become habituated.
Ben's habituated. He can't be helped. He was just there like nonchalantly. Yeah, bombs are bad, right? Like, you want to be able to try and avoid bombs. And I think the idea that these geckos are going to habituate to bombing, maybe they will one day.
It would be a weirder finding if they did over the course of 4 weeks, if they were no longer stressed.
Yeah. It's curious though, because obviously these geckos, they're experiencing this fear response and they have this heightened CO2 production, suggesting they're stressed out. One thing I was wondering is that obviously these geckos were wild geckos. They were caught and put in tanks for this experiment. And so they're not exactly they're not free roaming in any way, shape or form. And I was just wondering whether, because of these unusual circumstances in captivity, are they less equipped to actually seek what they perceive to be good shelter?
Yeah.
If
they don't have as much mitigative sort of strategies available to them. Yeah.
If you're just in a little plastic box with a small, with a kitchen roll tube for a hide, and there's bombs landing, it's not exactly the most secure situation. Whereas if you could go under 14 feet of rock, maybe you'd feel a little bit better. So it would be kind of curious. I mean, I don't think you can really measure their physiological response outside of a chamber. So I don't know if that's even something.
Not yet.
Maybe
technology's moving all the time. You never know.
People are sticking EEGs. What is it? Or is it EEG?
ECGs?
No. The electroencephalogram. That's the one on the brain, right? Yeah. Cardiogram's the one on the heart.
Yes,
encephalogram is the one on the brain.
Right?
And people are sticking those on animals now and looking at what they're thinking. It was you remember those elephant seals that went diving and they found out they were actually asleep as they drifted down in the water.
Interesting.
So I wonder if you could stick some EEGs on these things out in the wild and then bomb them and then see how they're getting on. See what they're thinking. Are those brainwaves? I don't know if we even can measure. This might be a bit perspective, but we can see what kind of brainwaves are going on with an EEG. Maybe we can see a stress response. Maybe that could be a way to do it on free roam lizards.
So this will actually tie into a little bit of any other business I have to chat about at the end of the episode. I would suspect before you were to do anything along those lines, you would need quite a few lab studies to get that baseline of what brain activity looks like stress, what brain activity looks like gecko sleep, what brain you need something to gauge it against. And I think you'd need to sort of ground truth it with visual observations to tally up a behavior with a certain pattern in your brain detecting little tags.
Yeah. Fun idea though.
Oh, it would be kind of incredible.
But yeah, so I mean, I guess the take home from this paper is, they've called it Stressed Reptiles Pay the Metabolic Price of War. Obviously war, savage and damaging in all ways. But now we know that lizards also are not fans of bombs. They are frightened. And I mean, conflict. I mean, conflict's just so destructive. You see images of the war in Ukraine and you just think, Jesus, there used to be trees there. Although it is Ukraine, so not that many, but there were some. A lot of that's been obliterated. So yeah, all of these conflicts have massive problems for animals, but it's not necessarily what people have got forefront in their mind for understandable reasons.
They do add a little bit at the end of the sort of discussion, bringing up the impact of sort of regular military training as well, which is not quite the same as open war, and is certainly not subject to the same sort of restraints, I suppose would be the word for it. So they do sort of highlight that these sorts of considerations are also, they're outside of just an open war. That you could do something with military training to mitigate some of these impacts, and probably should. So that there are more actionable sort of conservation implications for this research, rather than just being like, oh boy, the geckos aren't having a good time.
Yeah, that's a bit more worthy. I was worried I'd bashed Ukraine for no reason for having like very little forest cover, but they have 16%, UK has 13%, so nearly as bad as us. It was justified. Cool. All right, so let's move on to our species of the bye week, a species which probably eats geckos. So, we have a paper here by Idiiatullina, Pawangkhanant, Suwannapoom, Tawan, Chanhome, Nguyen, David, Vogel, and Poyarkov, some usual suspects there in Trimeresurus systematics. And the paper is entitled Another New Species of Karst-associated Pitviper, another one from the Isthmus of Kra, Peninsular Thailand. I think it's a bit anticlimactic to put another new species in the title. It makes it seem like a bit sort of, another new species. But this is a cool snake. We should be hyped. So yeah, it's more than just another new species of pit viper. It's a cool,
at the same time,
Trimeresurus.
Another new species of pit viper.
It is. But still, Trimeresurus, a genus of pit vipers. Oh, did I say where it was published? It's published in the European Journal of Taxonomy. But yeah, Trimeresurus, a genus of pit vipers that will always be close to my heart, having chased the big-eyed pit vipers, Trimeresurus macrops, around
chased.
Thailand. Yeah, I was chasing
They didn't
them.
exactly, try and get away. They're not
consistently
known for their
easily.
ability to flee.
No, they're fleeing, not really their strong suit. Staying still, hiding,
Now
conserving energy.
That's where they come into their own.
And being green. But yeah, that was in Thailand. And there were 47 species in the genus Trimeresurus before this one dropped. So Ben, if I said to you Trimeresurus pit viper, what springs to your mind? What image does that conjure in your head?
A sort of medium-sized snake that's sort of mostly arboreal, very big head, quite triangular head, very sort of pointy end of face, quite big eyes usually. Maybe eyes. A little sprinkling of toasty red somewhere on the face or tail or something along those lines.
It's interesting that you say a little sprinkling of red. For me, when I think of Trimeresurus, I always go plain green. I always just expect them to be plain green. But you're right, they're not always plain green. They often have that red tail.
A little bit of burnt tail.
Yeah, they often have the red tail because the Thai word for macrops is oh my god, am I going to say it? All right, it's like New Kiao Hang Mai, right? Which is like
the green snake with
red tail. Yeah. And so but this one particularly, this new species is not
Nukio Hamai Tato, with Tato being burnt tail, right? Nukio Hamai being green snake.
I don't know.
Yeah, so it's the Tato, which is the burnt tail bit.
Oh, okay, nice. Okay, cool. Well, saying that wrong the whole time. So yeah, this species is not plain green though. It's from the Trimeresurus camberiensis species complex. So these are relatively small. They're brightly coloured and patterned, and they live in the karst limestone sort of rocky environments of western and southern Thailand and northwestern Peninsular Malaysia. So they're from these like really striking limestone karst formations, and they tend to be a little bit more colourful. And this one's no exception. It's actually extremely beautiful. It's got sort of nice red sort of banding on a
almost
green
checkerboard
background. Yeah, but really, really, really striking and beautiful snake. And there's a sort of picture of comparing all the species in this Trimeresurus camberiensis complex, and this new one's really beautiful. You're right; it's almost just got like a sort of red checkerboard pattern.
Yeah.
But what have they called it? So they've called it Trimeresurus kraensis, and that is because of the Kra Isthmus in Peninsular Thailand, where the type locality of the species is located. So this little isthmus in Thailand. Kra just means Kra from the Kra Isthmus, and ensis means from. So it's from Kra, and they suggest the following common names. All right, as we were just trying to do Thai common names, they've called it New Hang Ham Chumpon. So that's green snake, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if
Something.
any of our Thai pronunciations are even remotely correct.
they're
and
terrible.
I'm
I
almost
can only
certainly
apologise.
not, but...
Yeah, I can only apologise to any Thai listeners. This pronunciation is just devastatingly bad. But yeah, I wonder what that means exactly. But yeah, they just call it the Kra Isthmus pitviper in English. And it's from this classic karst system, beautiful dry forest with these like really striking grey rocks that are kind of cut into by water and look really awesome. Do we know much about the ecology of this species? Probably not yet, do we?
We know that it's about 50 centimeters in length.
Standard. Pretty typical.
I mean, that is pretty standard, right? That's like a classic pit viper, this sort of Trimeresurus pit viper size.
Yeah. And this one's only been recorded from 2 small caves in Chumpon province, Thailand. Hence the name. The end of the name in Thai is Chumpon, so that must reference where it's from. Apparently, they're under threat from limestone quarrying because there's lots of demand for this limestone still.
Mm-hmm.
So this one could be considered near threatened. But guess what? Since this species is described, it makes Thailand the country with the most species of Trimeresurus in the world, with 17 species. So Thailand's out in the lead.
Now,
it's also way more heavily sampled.
You know, just to throw a wrench in the works, none of those have been moved to any sort of other genera, have they?
Well, the whole Cryptelytrops thing fell apart, didn't it?
Did it fall apart? So they're all back in Trimeresurus,
turned out to be... Yeah, because it was Anita's paper and I asked her about it. I'm pretty sure. And she said... I seem to recall her saying it's no one really follows it now, for a good reason. Not very descriptive. I'm not telling you the
but we don't know exactly the reason. Okay.
Yeah, I should follow up on that. I think we talked about it in the podcast ages ago.
We might have.
Anyway,
we might have, and I have forgotten.
Yeah, and then so I'm talking about Anita Malhotra, the Bangor herpetologist. So this new species, pretty cool. It was interesting to see the other species in this sort of complex, the Trimeresurus camberiensis species complex. There's another one in the complex called Trimeresurus ciliaris. And
that sounds a bit silly.
A bit silly. Yeah, but they have like the sort of eyelashes over the eyes almost. They have like a kind of, if you look at figure 6, it's CD, and you can see that they've got like much more textured scales.
They've
like
got almost like an upturned nose too. They're a much sort of slimmer, pointier sort of face. The others have quite sort of geometric, I suppose, would be sort of blocky heads.
Yeah, and these ones kind of have much more pronounced scales, and it kind of gives them a little bit of a sort of furry appearance. But they're called Trimeresurus ciliaris, and ciliaris means an eyelash. Well, cilium means eyelash, and ciliaris, I think, just means they have one. And so, yeah, they have this kind of interesting, like almost eyelash-like appendage, which is obviously quite similar to the ones from South and Central America, because they have Bothriechis supraciliaris, which is like eyelash above the eye. So yeah, a little bit of convergent evolution in appearance, but also naming there, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Oh, that tracks.
Yeah.
So do we know the purpose of the eyelashes?
Well, we did the whole episode on it, didn't we? It was like, we're not 100%. I think it might be to break up the outline of the head and eyes.
Camo stuff.
Foliage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense, because these eyes on these snakes are probably the easiest thing to sort of spot. The rest is... I mean, not that the eyes themselves aren't camouflaged, but the body, by comparison, is a lot more patterned, camouflaged.
Yeah. I want to see some investigation into the eye patterns of snakes. Like, why have all these species got different coloured irises? Would be cool to know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there we go. So that is the brand new species. We've got Trimeresurus kraensis from the Kra Isthmus in Peninsular Thailand. Congratulations to the authors and welcome to science. Have we got any other business for this episode, Ben?
We do. Yes, I alluded to it earlier. It was just an article on Manga Bay I was reading about this group out in California. I think headed up by Jeff Lem, I think, potentially. Basically, it's just tracking rattlesnakes, which, is nothing crazy, apart from with the constant and ever-present progress of technology, they're now able to put accelerometers along with their radio tags onto these rattlesnakes. And although no results are out yet, it's ongoing. They've got 17 radio transmitters and accelerometers on these rattlesnakes, and the idea is that you pull back this accelerometer data, and over time you can pick out instances of like a attempted predation event or something like that, where you've got these moments of very sharp acceleration that the snake has, experienced or done itself, which can be indicative of certain behaviors. So while it's very hard to sort of track a snake in high enough frequencies to get really fine scale movement stuff, the accelerometer data could sort of infill, okay, you can only track a snake every other day or something like that. But if you have accelerometer data in between, you can tell how active it was potentially, or how successful it was in its predation. Because you've got different indicators for maybe when it's passing a large prey item versus a strike without that passing a large prey item and things. It reminds me a lot of this wonderful study that put audio devices on with the collar on GPS collars with links, and they used the audio recordings recovered from those to identify kill sites, because they had the movement where the animal was, and then they had this audio signature of when it made a kill. And it's feeling like we are getting close to that sort of level of detail with snakes if this accelerometer stuff works. Not to the fine enough scale with the movement, but with the behavior. And once you've got that sort of behavior, then you can start thinking about energy intake and things along those lines, and it starts opening up a lot more sort of really intriguing insights into how these snakes live their lives.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, the output from accelerometers is amazing. I've not actually ever seen it, but I've got some slides about accelerometry in my lectures, and it's pretty cool. Like, you just get like a sort of, you get 3 dimensions, right? You get like Z, X, and W.
Yep.
You just basically see how strongly the animal's moving. And like you say, with something like a rattlesnake strike, the accelerometer, which is the same thing that's in our smartphones, that is a big movement, right? Like, that is going to be a serious slam in one direction. That is going to be like unmistakably something. I guess they may need to do some ground truthing though. Like,
that's what they're currently doing in the lab and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like a couple of weeks ago we were talking about that paper where they were like mashing the venomous snakes with a fake foot to see how they react. There must be such a definite signature of like an escape move, and it probably is way different compared to like a strike, particularly with a rattlesnake, because if there was, and you could even tell between a successful or unsuccessful predation, right? Because those guys let go and then follow. So if you've got like a strike without a follow, you can say, oh, it probably didn't hit. Whereas if you got a strike and then followed up with like a, they do that, what's it called? Stereotypical search behavior, right? Where they go into like search mode.
Where they maybe strike, release, and then track it down afterwards. Yeah,
you'd think you'd be able to see that as like
possibly
a slow, continuous. That's super exciting and really cool, and I really look forward to hearing more about it.
Yeah, right. It's cool things on the horizon. Yeah, I can't wait to can't wait to see what they can pull out of it.
Yeah, it's a good technological advancement. Brings us a lot. It brings us a lot.
Oh, it does. Yeah.
Capitalism's got a lot to be sorry for, but the increase in cool transmitters is not one of them.
Well, let's not attribute successes where they may not be.
Okay,
warranted.
Yeah, maybe that's maybe it wasn't capitalism's fault. Yeah, we still hate capitalism. All right, cool. So, have you got any other business?
No, just that.
I had a couple of minor bits of UK news which caught my eye over the last few weeks. One of which was, did you see they put an adder tunnel in some nature reserve in the UK?
Ah, so that's just like a tube that only an adder can fit through, or something a little bit more sizable than that?
Nah, it's like an underpass essentially. Over a road in a Berkshire common. So yeah, I mean that's a good sign, right? They've built 2 tunnels in Berkshire. Actually, these are pretty close. I'm going pretty close to this next weekend.
Check it out. See if you can see any adders.
Yeah, if I'm close, I might. But yeah, they're extinct in Bucks, which is my home county. or at least they've not been seen in 10 years. They're also virtually extinct in Oxfordshire. This is adders. So, we're finally building some culverts under roads, and there are a whopping 2 now, which is newsworthy. But it would be great if there were 2,000. But I just, still positive news. It's a good sign. Maybe that one population of adders, which is bisected by a road, might have a bit more gene flow and a bit less getting run over, which is good. Hopefully
we certainly know that gene flow is a major concern for them. So anything that helps, it's going to be good.
Yeah. But yeah, also on a slightly bleak note, did you see that guy who dumped the 10 giant tortoises in the woods?
No, I did not.
Yeah, so this guy had like giant tortoises as pets, and they died over Christmas because their heat broke, and he dumped them in the woods, and then people found them and thought it was like some kind of introduction event, but actually it was just somebody dumping some dead tortoises. But it made headline news in the UK.
Amazing.
But just a bit sad, really. But yeah, they're not making themselves native. They just got dumped by an irresponsible pet owner, which is pretty savage. But yeah, there's been a bit of reptile goings on in the UK anyway. But that's it for me. I haven't got any other business, Ben. So I think, what else is there to say, really? If you want to get in touch with us, you can. herphighlights@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, the best way to do that is on Patreon, patreon.com/herphighlights, link in the show notes. Thanks, as always, to all our patrons.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, I think that's pretty much it, really. So, thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.